Hello, welcome back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next 8 to 10 days in today's video, which will take us to around the 6th of February, so into the first week of the final month of the winter. We'll also at the end have a look at the month ahead update from CFSB2, looking for signs of some colder weather for the end of February. I did a video yesterday speculating about the chance of some colder weather for the end of February. We're going to keep monitoring the CFSB2, see whether it starts to pick up on this idea that could get some blocking towards the end of the month. So have a look at that at the end of the video as well. Before I get on with that though, just say about the ads. So see articles on all pages at Gas Office. Have a browse widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. So we're going to start off with 500 millibar heights for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECWF here on the top and the GFS is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet, is an area in the atmosphere where high pressure, low pressure being moved around by jet stream running above. On these charts, blue is extrapolating to low pressure and orange, red extrapolates to high pressure. So what we see for the next 8 to 10 days, which takes us, as I say, up to around the 6th of February, is that we've got a deep trough of low pressure up to the north of the country on both the ECWF and the GFS. And then we've got this ridging going on to the south. So it remains into the start of February a classic westerly zonal setup, jet stream indicated by the tight lines, quite a strong jet stream coming across the Atlantic and into the UK, rather like that. So it's just a continuation of the pattern we've had through most of the winter, really, with low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, bringing these westerlies through into the country. It'll be unsettled. Most unsettled conditions will be in the north, close to that trough of low pressure, but all places look unsettled, really. And there'll be bands of rain coming through at times, but with the flow being off the Atlantic, it should be relatively mild, although there could be some colder incursions coming into the north, particularly. But overall, it is an Atlantic-driven pattern. Excuse me. So we see on the GFS temperature and precipitation on some ensembles for the next couple of weeks that we've got a bit of a zonal sine wave here to start off with. So we're up and down with the temperatures. We've got a warm sector there, a cold sector, a warmer sector, a colder sector, and a warmer sector. It should even itself out, you will think, to be around average in terms of those warmer and cold sectors, but at this time we come out warmer than average, and it's mainly because at night, when we're in a colder sector, we tend to stay frost free because it tends to be quite windy with bands of rain coming through. So overall, when you average it all out, we do tend to come out generally milder than average in these zonal setups. Now, after that, into the first week of February, so this is the 1st of February just here, this is the 5th of February just here, you'll notice we lose that zonal sine wave a little bit, and we trend down towards average. So it does imply it perhaps turns a little bit cooler through the first week of February. There's no sign of anything desperately cold coming up there, but probably a little bit cooler through the first week of February. There's a lot of scatter within that ensemble as well, you'll notice. So several members are really very mild, several members are really very cold. So a little bit uncertain what's going on there as we go through the first week of February, but I will think it stays generally Atlantic driven. The precipitation spikes are there, so we've got rainfall coming up through the course of this week and into the weekend, and then more rainfall through the course of next week. You'll probably get a drier spell, not completely dry, but drier through the middle part of next week. It looks like it turns very wet actually through into the second week of February. That's a long way off. The overall message is Atlantic driven and unsettled, really, for the next couple of weeks. Temperature anomalies for the coming week show we're significantly milder than average, as is most parts of Europe. So that's what I was talking about with the zonal pattern. Although we've got warmer and colder sectors, we still come out warmer than average with this sort of pattern at this time of the year. So this is the temperature anomaly from the 26th of January through to the 3rd of February, and it's just a sea of red. Again, we saw this in December. We've gone back to this sort of pattern now. Sea of red across Europe, so it's milder than average from Ireland, Portugal in the west over to Russia in the east, and all places between generally coming out milder than average. Also wetter than average. This is the precipitation anomaly from the 26th of January through to the 3rd of February. And again, we see wetter than average conditions, above average precipitation there through most of central, northern and western Europe. It's drier than average with those ridges to the south, so Spain, Portugal, Italy, those sort of areas coming out drier than average, but to the north, across northern Europe, it's looking significantly wetter than average. It's also turning milder in America, so after that blizzard that they had in the east of America over the weekend, temperatures will be starting to recover there during the coming week. Most parts of the states, central eastern areas anyway, turning milder than average. It is still colder than average out in the west. Here's what the GFS is doing for Saturday then. Looks like they have a wet and windy start, and as that clears away, we'll start bringing some colder air into the north, which could turn showers wintry. We go through into Sunday, another push of mild air starting to come up from the southwest then on Sunday. And you see, the broad pattern is still the same. It's right on the height anomaly chart. It's high pressure to the south through the Azores, in Spain, Portugal, through the Mediterranean, low pressure to the north and the west of the country, and a zonal westerly flow in between. Going through to start of next week, this is Monday the 1st of February, still bringing those westerlies through across the country. And when we go through into the middle part of next week, it does turn a little bit colder there. This is Wednesday the 3rd of February. Might be bringing a cold front down across the country, bringing a band of rain. And behind that, it does actually turn quite cold. The air is going up to the north and the northwest, so that can start to turn showers wintry for the middle part of next week, in the north particularly. And then a ridge builds as we go through into the end of next week. This is Thursday before February. We've got a ridge building within quite cold air, so that'll give us night frost at the very least. But it's not long before we go back to westerly, and the broad pattern isn't changing. It's just a little bit of a colder snap coming into the north through the middle part of next week. But overall, the broad pattern isn't changed. So this is out to day 10, Friday the 5th of February. And again, we see it's a pattern of high pressure across most of Europe, low pressure to the northwest. Westerlies obviously coming back in with more bands of rain. There's no fundamental shift in the pattern there. At least out into the first week of February. Go look at meteoseal.fr for the East End of Europe because it's not updating Wetter Central. So this is the chart for the weekend. This is taking us into Saturday. Again, we're into this westerly flow and it's generally mild, although there's a band of rain coming through. Behind that, it probably turns colder up to the north. We go through into Sunday, the 31st of January, still in an unsettled westerly flow. High pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. We get through into next week. This is Monday the 1st of February, again still in this westerly flow, and then we do bring this little colder snap in across the country on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. So well, it's still very westerly really, but it probably does turn colder for the north by middle part of next week with the risk of some wintry showers up there. Less of a risk actually further south. We're generally under a ridge of high pressure, but there could be some night frost at the very least. And then go through to the second half of next week, and it turns very unsettled again. In fact, this is the day 10 chart for Friday the 5th of February. Looks a bit alarming actually. This very deep area of low pressure would be bringing severe gales in across the country, and no doubt a lot of heavy rain as well. That's day 10. It's a long way off. It's probably a bit over the top, but that does look very, very stormy actually for the 5th of February. So up to the first week of February, there's no sign of a change to this Atlantic-driven pattern. Let's just see if there's any sign of changes into the second half of February with CFSV2. So this is the latest update of the CFSV2 for the coming month. 500 millibar heights again broken down into weekly periods. This is the first weekly period going from the 26th of January to the 1st of February. And we know what we've got coming up for the coming week. We've got high pressure to the south, we've got low pressure to the north, and we're in this westerly flow. It's unsettled. And overall, it's quite mild. There are a few colder incursions coming through at times, particularly to the north, but overall, it's mild. We go through into week 2, which is the 2nd through to the 8th of February. Again, low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south. This is lining up a little bit cooler though. This is more of a northwest-southeast flow. So the first week of February, we start bringing those cooler snaps into the north, but it's still Atlantic driven, so we're not looking at a cold spell by any means. Just turns a little bit cooler up to the north through the first week of February, but still very unsettled. Week 3, this is from the 9th through to the 15th of February. It's still very Atlantic driven. We've got low pressure around Greenland and Iceland. we've got high pressure starting to pull out into the Atlantic. This is something that was showing up with CFS V2 and the Beijing Climate Centre on yesterday's update, that the high pressure could start to pull out into the Atlantic as we progress through February. And notice this big ridge setting up to the north of Scandinavia. Got to keep an eye on that. That'll have a lot of very cold air underneath it. So very subtly, as we go through the middle part of February, things could be starting to line up here for some colder weather. And we go through to week 4. This is from the 16th to 22nd of February, with definite signs of retrogression of the high pressure out into the Atlantic. So we're taking the high pressure from Spain and Portugal and the Med, shifting it out in the central part of the Atlantic. At the same time, this ridge is building to the north of Scandinavia. There's probably a trough coming through here, and I think the jet stream is probably doing something a bit like that. So very slowly, very subtly and incrementally, I think we're probably shifting here, and I talked about this yesterday, to a colder pattern for the second half of February. We've got to watch out for this ridge that it's trying to build across the north of Scandinavia, because that could start to turn the winds into the east, into the second half of February, particularly towards the end of the month. We've got to keep an eye on this. It's probably tying in with the stratospheric warming that could be occurring around the 5th and the 6th of February. I'll be keeping an eye on that over the coming few days as well. There's always a time delay on that and then getting the blocking in place. But the way the CFS is trending, and we saw it with the Beijing Climate Centre yesterday, I do think very gradually it's beginning to set up the chance of a significantly colder end to February, and of course a cold end to the winter. So it'll be a case of watch your space, see what happens with it. It may come to nothing, because all of these long-range models are highly experimental, but we need to keep an eye on what's going on, I think, for the second half of February. But in the more reliable time frame, for next week to 10 days, it remains Atlantic-driven, wet and windy, and fairly mild at times. So there will be cooler incursions coming into the north, particularly, I think, around Tuesday, Wednesday next week. But overall, the Atlantic dominates for the time being, but we've got to watch out for what's happening in the second half of February. That's it for now, and thanks for watching.